All right, we've got Aaron Allsbrook on the line here. Something about innovation. How you been?
Good, Clayton. I've been very well. It's a beautiful day today, and checked a lot of good boxes today, so I'm going to sleep well tonight, that's for sure.
So, as we were talking before we got cut off before, you have to repeat everything you just said.
Yeah.
Last week, a lot of discussion about digital twins versus intelligent assets. And I guess my first question is, at some point in your history, you decided, because digital twins have been around for a long time, that you wanted to brand it, intelligent assets, go that direction, perhaps attack a different segment of the market. Could you just talk a little bit about, what your intent was there when you took that action?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty, deliberate in how we looked at it. We've been in the space a long time. To your point, digital twins have been around for maybe 20 years, right? I haven't done the research on how long, but certainly a lot of technologies have come out in this time span since that idea. We have gone very intentionally after a term intelligent assets. We very intentionally go after what we see as the hard and, quite frankly, the first problem you should solve as you're trying to get to what digital twins ultimately describe. Right. But digital twins is a very confusing term, right? Everything under the sun's now thrown into this. Meanwhile, people in a lot of cases are just trying to do some basic stuff that's incredibly meaningful and, the first step to all the other stuff. And that's what intelligent asset is. So from our standpoint, is it a little bit of a branding, but it also is a great way to differentiate, because we can say, look at what this vision was, but look at what we need. And that's intelligent assets. It's the first steps, the value steps of what digital twins ultimately we hope will achieve.
Yeah. So, a digital twin, for those out there, it essentially allows you to do in a virtual world what is happening in the physical world. Do things like change parameters, tweak the design, and see, okay, what's going to happen. How would you contrast that to an intelligent asset? What kind of things can you do with an intelligent asset, or that you can do with a digital twin that you can't do with an intelligent asset?
If a digital twin was just that, I'd have no problems with it. What you just said is something that I can go and tweak parameters on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Problem is I'm going to look at my LinkedIn feed later today, and I'm going to browse technology news, and I'm going to see a lot of companies that have said a lot about virtual reality, have said a lot about automated AI. It's probably going to have some blockchain in it. We're going to have, all augmented reality, all very cool futuristic things, but none of those are just changing a parameter. Right. So I would say intelligent assets is about defining the asset, just the parameters you need, and putting that into the field and connecting it and getting that real data. I think that's the challenge with the term digital twin. And if you listen to that whole conversation, digital twin, quite frankly, became a big tent. Actually, they brought technology in since the moon landing, right? So everybody was in it.
That was a physical twin. Actually,
and then it was a physical twin, but in the end, right, it was a lot of technology fell under digital twins in that case, which is, I get, right. These things are captures, and people want to be part of markets, but that market has gotten so big, so confused. When I think about it, maybe I'm a little biased, but I see very expensive, large projects now, right? Yeah. As a matter of fact, I would be afraid if someone came and said digital twin, because I don't even know what I'm getting. So intelligent assets isn't about that. It's about what are the 4 parameters we need. What can we, maybe we are going to do some AI, which is forward thinking, but it's actually just advanced math. And that, 4 parameters, we can learn a ton with 4 parameters. But it's focused. The scope is much, much narrower.
So is it just is it just monitoring the asset, or can I actually go beyond that? And
so,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The definition that we're seeing is it's connected, it's monitored, it has command and control, tracking is also inside of it, and then we see reporting and some inferencing, right? Some very infant inferencing going on as well, right? That extra little intelligence. So it is bidirectional communication. where it makes sense. It is being tracked, which, historically has been a whole other market segment of asset tracking, right? That all falls together. And it's then the real-time monitoring. And then once you have that, you have the capability to put good old-fashioned operational rules in place. The stuff that you do every day by hand, those rules can start to be automated.
Can I put intelligence behind that? Or like, for example, like with an injection molding machine, and we kind of went back and forth about that on LinkedIn. So, it's not even controlled. I know what the pressure is, but there's no feedback loop that then tweaks it and changes it to what it needs to be in order to keep quality where it needs to be. Can you do that with what your product provides?
Yeah, so the answer is yes, right? And so again, this is our implementation of intelligent assets. There's multiple folks out there doing this, right? So we're not alone in this segment and kind of this need to step away from digital twins. That said, we see very clearly maturing to that. You don't do it out of the box.
Right, of course.
You heard a conversation where I was kind of saying it takes time. You have to get the data first before you can go do. And I'm careful here. I use the word inferencing because that doesn't sound like I'm saying AI or ML. It is. But ultimately what we find is as you have the real data, there are stuff you can do with that real data and compare it to the historical information, whether it's an AI model or just out of normal, and you can enrich back into the asset. So the attributes on the asset now aren't just the digital physical stuff, right? It's not just the temperature. It's now the chance that it's out of range, right? The probability that it's going to break.
Right.
So you're able to put derived attributes, derived capabilities back on the asset as well. And we are doing that. We're doing that for predicting some stuff that goes through very cold places, the chances that it will break. We're doing that for predicting the fact that things might be leaking versus historical trends, daytime trends. We're doing that in a number of places. But it's never first. I think that's also important. It's never the first thing. We're not selling that out of the gate. That's the vision where we go together, but we start with some ROI along the way.
And you're a no code, out of the box, it's no code, right? It's just
the intelligent assets is no code. Yep.
And then
we serve two users. We have coders on the back end. That's platform stuff, right? We're not talking about those folks. And we serve operations. That's no code. That's the intelligent assets.
Okay. But then if you want to code and take it to that next level, then that's an option.
And it's all running on that platform and have at it. The nerds will go crazy, right? I coded a little bit myself today. They still let me do it every now and then. But yes, you can go in and code it to customize it for every IT has their own policies, right? You've got to conform. If you lock it down too much, you'll never meet the goals and compliance risk stuff. So it's fully open on the other side.
So where do you see the future, in the next, let's say 2 to 4 years in your industry? Where do you see it going?
So I right now, so obviously there's people finding ways to make better products. We have some customers using us to make better products because they're intelligent now, right? There is assets to be able to do more. We see people attacking certain digital capabilities or services, right? And we try to be real concrete. Preventing theft is something that you want to do. It's like planning, right? Refilling your tanks is something you want to do. Making sure you're compliant are things that you want to do, and they're kind of very IoT specific capabilities. So that's what we're talking about. When I look 2 to 4 years out, I see a few of those getting very, very scaling really well. Right, tracking's an easy one to scale. Whether once you figure out all the ways to track, the problem starts to look kind of similar. Whether it's indoor ultra wideband or satellite or cellular trilateralization, it's still, where is it? I see another thing that's happening lately is a lot of regulation bodies are willing to look at using this type of thing instead of the old-fashioned pen and paper and guesstimates. so I see, who knows what happens with infrastructure and all that stuff, but I see a lot of folks just finding these core capabilities and scaling them across different business units. That's what I think is going to happen, and we'll be kind of putting it together.
So kind of switching topics a little bit, COVID, obviously, what kind of disruption has that, what have you seen in your business as a result of COVID?
I mean, our business changed a lot in how we approach the market. We definitely, we've been selling platform to big companies for years. Definitely gigantic investments in large software purchases that slowed down last year. While there was other digital services that got adopted, it wasn't gigantic platforms and large digital strategies, no matter how compelling it was. What we did see go crazy is this idea of buying by the asset, serving the business in a very granular way, being very specific about the ROI. And I don't think that's too different in the fact that now everybody uses Teams and Slack and Zoom, because it's basically adding on to that stuff that we can get from these basically services, these little bit software subscriptions. So we definitely saw software subscriptions grow heavily in importance for these IoT-like use cases. We also saw integrations, what people were interested in, change dramatically. So just like we felt people slowing down on interest of kind of enterprise-like software, we saw that who they wanted us to integrate with also fell off dramatically. So legacy vendors of large, bulky systems were no longer the thing to integrate with. It was, could we tell a customer service rep in Teams that their customer's ready, right? And can they acknowledge it from Teams? And can we work within? Could you open a Zoom call via when something goes wrong for us? So the creativity on working with completely different sets of communication. Right, we did push notifications years ago on mobile. We had SMSs, but now people are really adopted a whole other set of communication tools, and that was a big thing that switched for us in COVID.
What? So you're still in Austin, is that correct?
I am.
Yeah.
I am, and my computer just melted in the Austin heat here. So.
How hot is it?
I think we're at 90 today. It was a pretty good little day out going.
Yeah, it's pretty chilly up here, Illinois.
Okay.
So
I don't mean to brag. Then sorry.
Austin's changing, right? I mean, there's a lot more of a tech focus in Austin. Some of that was starting when I visited you guys at probably 5 years ago. What are you seeing from your perspective in the tech world as it relates to Austin?
Well, it's been a weird year to know what's going on anywhere in the world, but obviously this town is growing tremendously, and really has been you don't need me to echo the news of how many companies are either opening big shops or moving their headquarters here.
And you've got
always
Joe
been a
Rogan
town.
now too, so there's that.
I do.
Is he your neighbor?
He hasn't invited me on yet. Yeah, he hasn't invited me on yet. No. So. Yeah, I mean, obviously with COVID, you're not able to go out, but it's always been a town where people were out, and you would see. You'd see the folks, and it was pretty cool that it wasn't a us and them kind of place. I hope that Austin always keeps that vibe. It's a pretty relaxed vibe. I think it's also allowed it to be pretty free thinking, which I think is there's a lot of incubation and startups that's happened here. A lot of cities when they take that turn, give them a chance to innovate to the point of this, right? You can take a few risks, try new things. You're not ostracized for it. So this town certainly is encouraging from that sense. But it's growing like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you see for ClearBlade going forward as far as, everyone back in the office? Are you still in the same office you were before when I came down, or have you moved?
No, we moved out a few blocks, but we have a bigger space for the team's been growing, so we're still downtown focused. I think certainly the office will open again, but I think we as a company learned we always knew what the challenges and things we weren't sure we would do how we would do remotely, which is why we had the office, for how we collaborate, train, potentially set culture. And a year away made us, we're either going to thrive or you were going to fail. We had to solve those problems. And we did. I would say we probably had about 3 or 4 months where we probably worked way harder at how do we communicate, do we have the right tools? In a lot of cases we did have the right tools. We just weren't using them to their full capability. But going forward, I think, we're going to be a virtual first is how we look. I think we'll probably be able to have more flexibility in where we hire around the country and the world. So it's a very interesting time, but I think there are some things that while we'll certainly have the office and the headquarters, we'll probably also be more flexible than we ever were before.
When I was there last time, you were focused specifically on industrial IoT, right? Is that still your focus?
Yeah, we still focus industrial IoT. We have customers now and partners, I guess, that take our stuff and take it into other industries. But we believe it takes a lot of domain knowledge. You heard me say this about probably 100 times last week in the chaos. It was, you got to know this stuff, right? If you don't know these businesses, you're 9 to 6 months away. Even if you have the best algorithm, the best data scientists, those people have to go and have that domain knowledge. So we stick to industrial verticals. We've got about 6 that we're pretty good at, that we can go in and understand what those folks want. We've stayed pretty focused on things like transportation, supply chain, oil and gas, mining, agriculture. We really have tried to stick to things that were industrial, and in a lot of cases, outdoor industrial. So some of those hardened lessons we've learned in other places about how do we make sure the devices don't overheat, how to make sure those devices run through cold winters. That knowledge is pretty transferable for us. So that's where we sit today. I mean, obviously technology can be used lots of different ways, but we like to make sure we understand how it's going to be used and where the value is.
You were using Raspberry Pis, at least some when I was there last time. Are you still on the Pi, or are you using Nooks, or what do you got on the edge?
So we'll run on anything that has Linux, an operating system Linux on it. So we run on, we got a lot of great partners in this space. If you can go to our website and see these, but we got a lot of gateway partners from Advantech to Lantern to Phoenix Contact to Moxa to Corvalent. We have a lot of really great partners, all with different profiles. You got to be able to run on gigantic multi-core x86 devices to being able to run on, even MIPS and ARM. We're running a Power PC. They're all chipsets we support.
That's interesting.
And as you move down, right, these white boxes, these home routers and stuff you have, right, they're probably a little MIPS chip in there. If you're going to leverage all the compute wherever it is, you've got to be pretty flexible. So,
what other things have you learned over the last year, would you say?
Over the last year, certainly we've seen some things really trend. Edge has been interesting to watch. I guess we launched our first Edge product in 2017. And back then it was pretty clear, right? It's this Raspberry Pi thing right here on the desk that you could kind of touch. And you knew that it was going to talk to sensors, and somehow it was going to do its magic, and it was going to get to maybe a cloud server or something. Term edge has gotten super broad, right? Now, if you own a data center that's not in the cloud, it's an edge, right? If you own a cell phone tower and it has computers, it's an edge. I would imagine if whoever owns the little telecom boxes up the street, if there's some compute there, that's an edge. So that's been interesting to watch that space and how broad it's gotten. Kind of the term digital twin. Whatever it's defined as today, these things are constantly changing. Learned a ton about industries. I've learned a crazy amount about, detecting leaks and predicting leaks in like gigantic city infrastructures. Learned a ton about how rail, does monitoring of their equipment to keep the longest lifetime possible. Learned a ton about farming, about how the water, the type of air, and how much light things get. I don't know. My brain's full of stuff. This is why I can sleep well at night. I got nothing left.
How do you guys tackle innovation? I mean, is that just something that's expected in each individual that works for ClearBlade? Do you have formal innovation efforts? What's your kind of methodology for that?
So, I'll say we're informal, right? I'll start with, I think innovation often comes from being pretty flexible in how and where it can come from. I'll also say we work hard to make sure innovation ties directly into what our customers want, right? So, even when we began way back in 2012 with what was our IoT platform, it was coming from the fact that we had been using other people's products. We felt a major pain. We thought we could solve that pain better. And then the innovation is answering how do we do that, all those questions around it. And so the innovation is pretty unstructured. I mean, the number of ideas that people have come back with from, was hiking or wherever else, right? It's staring at the problem and going backwards. I'll say the biggest thing probably is how maybe not spontaneous it is, right? It's everybody going and saying, we wish we could solve this problem. And then who knows how many hours we wasted reading and trying to find other things and understand, is there something in a corollary market that solves this problem already, right? I mean, so many industries of what worked in rail might work in mining, and they have the exact same thing, but they call it a bucket versus a lifter. So the amount of just getting the full context before you try to come up with the big hurrah is also, I don't know, maybe we do it the boring way here. Maybe it'd be more fun to go and just have a North Star and decide we should do that and see if it works. But
yeah, the reason why I asked that question is, I worked with Lars Behrendt out of Germany, and he has this thing called the Inno Week. So, for companies, they take an idea and he brings in a team of developers and all the kind of, we would call it a hackathon probably. And he comes in 1 week and they work, that's all they're working on for 1 week, and they focus on, what's the idea, what's the objective, and what's the deliverable. And they just iterate, kind of by the hour through the problem the entire week. I just found that idea really compelling for companies, which kind of leads me into the next question is when you get a new customer, what are the challenges? Because one of the things that's really frustrating, at least from my perspective, is the ability to get innovative products like yours into an environment active, delivering value. What techniques do you use specifically to minimize that time period where, you go from this is what we want to accomplish to, okay, we've got what you want, at least at some scale, and then we can expand that if we want.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump. You mentioned, I believe, Lars with this kind of innovation
in a week. Yeah,
in a week. There was I can't remember quite the name of the book, but there was a pretty good book we all read as a company. It's another maybe weird thing we do. We almost have a book club that folks will read at times together.
That's cool.
And it was about basically like this kind of like week sprint, design sprint or innovation sprint. And really it was pretty intense. And it really kind of went through how do you cycle through the inception of something that you want or that goal, cycle down into what is ultimately something that you believe is viable and that you can execute on. I won't say we've ever run one that formally. I will say that, our best moments are when we've come up against a challenge, right? It's like we thought we had this solved, and then there were 4 to 7 to 8 people in the room with very different backgrounds and very different ideas. Yep. And some folks who saw only user interface and some folks who only saw data structures, and then someone else who, just loved a specific industry, right? And those were the weirdest moments because we would drive, and this person who, came from a different industry would say, why are we even trying to solve this problem, right? And you'd wiggle and And those are probably the most innovative sessions we have, where you end up getting down to, you know, we thought we were going to go and solve a data reconciliation problem in a unique way. And instead what we solved was basically how we should have used the protocol in a more interesting way, right? Or something along those nature. So I get that. I'll say, but we're absolutely, it's much more fluid, and we let people run far more science experiments on their own and come back and say, all right, here's an idea. You know, what does this solve that we didn't have before? You just asked about your second question there.
Yeah, about customers. So you have a customer that comes to you. They want to get it as quickly as they can into their, you know, production environment. You know, what if, maybe you don't want to give some of this away because it's a competitive advantage, but you know, what are some of the things you'd be willing to share about how to get that from an idea, because all this stuff sounds great, into something that's actually, you know, a deliverable that they can say, hey, we accomplished this.
Well, yeah. And this gives me a chance to rail against the topic of why we're here, right? So the fact that these digital twin marketing sits out there means that these first meetings are somewhat ridiculous, right? It's like, well, you know, you can see that there's a person, you can see there's a box. Can you see that the person's hiding in the box, you know, and you know, just, it's sort of like the technology of what's being advertised and what is reality. It's difficult to know right now.
Sure. Even
I have to go to my data scientist and be like, is this even a thing? So, you know, there's a lot that's very possible. And there's a lot of, when you start an engagement, of, we really have to understand the business, right? And that's why we probably avoid lots of cool opportunities, because we sit there and, like, for us to go become experts, in plastic injection molding, while it sounds simple, just to capture some parameters and look for some vibrations, you smile because you probably know there's a lot to that process, right? There's a reason why there's some very specialized people who do it. So there's usually let's set a first milestone of let's make sure that we are showing you what you believe to be true already. You know, you tell me you can find leaks, right? I'm not going to ask you how well do you find them. I'm not going to ask you, you know, how long does it take you to find them from when they start? There's a lot of good metrics around those things, but let's just make sure that we understand your data and your information and your business as well as you do. That's always kind of the first step, because if we can figure it out and capture it, then we can bring our other tools to bear. And so really, you know, there's a journey behind all this. You know, if we were talking just AI, I'd say we got to connect first. We have to understand first. We have to analyze. We then have to begin predicting. And we certainly aren't going to make any actionable decisions until you like all of these predictions along the way, right? And so, again, I guess I make everything boring, but it's really kind of a journey down this path. And with our customers too, it's like, let's make sure ClearBlade understands what you're doing. We can bring cool technologies to bear. We can make them very fast to use, but we got to make sure we understand what you're doing first. And so that's a lot of what we work through in those early kind of conversations.
So, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts.
We've done
final thoughts.
We're coming up on 30 minutes here. I don't want to take too much of your time.
Yeah, no, well, I appreciate the chance to be here. It's interesting to think about innovation. When you invited me, I was trying to remember back to 2012 and what it was like. You know, obviously we've been building on something for a lot of years. You know, I can't necessarily say that I feel like you're innovating when some of your best moments come along the way. Maybe that's kind of one of my thoughts is it's a lot of time it's retrospectively like, wow, that was a really crazy, weird decision we made that turned out to guide us, you know, much further down the path than we ever imagined. Even edge from some perspectives, you know, how we got to having what is an industry leading edge product is more kind of an accident of nobody else is solving this problem. Let's just put what we've got down here and, oh, wow, it works great. And suddenly we have full edge compute. There is some of there's a lot of just understanding the problem, a lot of reading and research, solving it, and then going back and saying, man, that was an amazingly innovative moment where we were all having together. And so kind of interesting takeaway of looking for those moments of innovation. It more often than not wasn't a 1 week session. It was more often than not, it was a all hands on deck. We got to solve this the right way. So
makes sense. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. I wish you guys the best of luck, and hang out afterwards. We'll chat a little bit if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thanks,
great.
man.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Where's my mouse?